What's up, man? It's Deshaun Hamilton, wide receiver for the Broncos, and you're tuned in to the Saturday morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Go Broncos.
Hey, welcome back to the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. It is another beautiful Saturday morning, June 29th, coming to you here live, wherever you are and however you may be listening. We want to thank you for making us a special part of your day. We've got some fantasy stock talk today. Got the whole crew with me, Mark, Scott, Landon. Let's get this thing rolling, boys. How we been doing? Mark, summer is finally here for us teachers.
That's right. Yeah, woo. I don't like to really announce officially what I do for a living because in the summertime, I just lie. And, you know, that Monsieur Poole that is held in such high esteem throughout the school year, he's gone.
He's now an alcoholic.
Yeah, he's the guy face down outside of dive bars.
Guys, it needs to be said that it is 30 degrees here up in Canada, and we are inside recording for our listeners. We are dedicated to the craft.
You're damn right.
We will continue to do so all summer long. Scotty, what's good, homie?
Well, you know what? It is so warm here in Toronto, you just have to think Kawhi Leonard wants to stay, because this weather is terrific.
Yeah. You took the Raptors joke right away from me, but I like it. I really like it.
We're on free agent watch here. You know, two leagues are about to hit free agency that are not NFL related, but you know, the season never stops in the sports world. We're doing fantasy football talk here at 30 degrees in end of June, and a bunch of other leagues are going into free agency. What would we do without sports?
Well, and happy Canada Day,
happy Canada Day coming up
to everybody. But yeah, Mac, how are you doing? How's the grinding on the projections coming along? Yeah,
good, man. So Landon and I have been hammering out our final projections, just sort of tweaking things. And again, you know, we'll do it again heading into preseason, OTAs, all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, Landon and I have just been banging it out. NFC is done, revamped. We got the AFC coming up next. So those projections will be coming to you guys fairly soon. But speaking of fantasy never sleeps, even though it is so beautiful up here and, you know, we're still committed to the craft. I've had some hot debate here, and that's probably why it's so warm out, but some hot debate regarding Dak Prescott, Cowboys quarterback. Ooh. Just made a bet with one of our listeners. You play in a league with him, Mr. Muir. We just made a bet regarding Dak Prescott's fantasy finish. He said top 6, and I thought that was super steep. So we ended up making a bet on top 10. I took the over. He took the under. The loser has to buy the winner an NFL jersey of their choice. And
Ooh,
so the question I posed to you three, my crew, my ride or dies, can Dak Prescott be a top 10 quarterback in 2019? Did I make a good bet or a poor bet?
Scotty, I want you to lead this off with the Prescott talk.
I'm going to say I do not think he will be a top 10 quarterback. It's not, for me, it's not about a knock on his talent level. I do think he's a talented quarterback, and now he does have the best wide receiving core he's really had in Dallas. The issue is he still has the best, in my opinion, running back in the NFL, who famously is hungry and wants to eat. And when it comes to fantasy points, that always scares me when you're looking at a quarterback, which is why I always value somebody more like an Aaron Rodgers ahead of, you know, leaps and bounds ahead of somebody with a Zeke in the backfield. Because when you get into that red zone area, that 5-yard line, 10-yard line with him, the 15-yard line, they're looking at him sometimes 3 times in a row before they're going to want to go to the air. Mm-hmm. And I don't see that changing. Zeke's in his prime, and I just don't think you can trust a guy like Dak Prescott where the coach is going to say, all right, we're 3 yards from the goal line, we're throwing it. I think they're going to give it to Zeke 9 times out of 10, and that's not a top 10 finish for me.
Marky, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of in the same boat as Scott here, not fully convinced that this guy, regardless of any big contract extension that he signs, is going to do much better than his performance last year. I think he might be able to sustain those numbers, but to me, I'm just not that wowed by the personnel around him. While Amari Cooper did really impress in Dallas, Michael Gallup did not. And we're looking at Jason Witten to be his tight end. But to me, those wins that we saw last year in Dallas, a lot of people might credit those to the QB being such an important position on any football team, but you can't dispute Zeke's consistent performance and the team's dependence on him, not to mention their defense really putting up a rock solid year. So I don't think all those wins belong to Dak Prescott. I don't think he's a top 10, maybe top 12.
All right, this is perfect because I'm going to argue for the Dak Prescott side.
So, hit me. Taylor's going to love this.
I have finished my projections on Dallas, and I feel like in an offense like that, like Scotty said, I think it's going to improve because the talent has stayed the same and even gotten better because a guy like Michael Gallup is in his second year and should see improvements on his talent, on his efficiency, etc. Dak Prescott has rushed for 6 touchdowns each of his first 3 seasons, and I don't see that stopping. He likes to take those touchdowns away from Zeke. Zeke has famously been catching the ball a lot more last year, so I don't see him slowing down. They need to stay like the LA Rams. They see the pass catchers work well out of the backfield, and Zeke has good hands. He can catch the ball. So a couple of those screen plays I can see going to the house as well. The rushing stats are very consistent with Dak Prescott, and he's not slowing down. There's no reason to think that the offense is getting worse or he would slow down his rushing capability. I think it does all depend on the rushing quarterback. As always, the rushing quarterback in fantasy football is broken. And because he's mobile, because he is not scared of doing it, and Zeke's going to catch more out of the backfield, and Amari Cooper's there for a full 16 games if healthy, I think it's a no-brainer that he could potentially be a top 10 quarterback, but I think it does rely on him scrambling and being on the ground.
Okay, so these are the exact points that Taylor was making to me. And his biggest argument was that Dak's going to have Amari Cooper to throw at, and Michael Gallup's making a step forward this year, and he'll have a consistent wide receiver too. Cole Beasley's gone, we know that, but he's going to have 2 weapons, one of them which is considered elite by most. So I did some digging through the stats, and just to reference, Dak Prescott finished if you do weeks 1 to 16 in standard quarterback scoring, Dak Prescott is 15th, QB 15. And the reason I use 1 to 16 is because week 17, unless you play in a very unorganized league, your championship shouldn't be in week 17. We've said this a lot before. And so I'm going to use weeks 1 through 16 to base my my stats off. So weeks 1 through 16, he was 15. If you count week 17, he jumps up to 10th. That just goes to show you how few quarterbacks that are in relevant positions don't play week 17. So I think it's inaccurate. So 1 to 16 is what I'm using. In the weeks without Cooper, which is 1 to 6, he was quarterback 19. With Cooper, that's week 7 and onwards, 7 to 16, he is ranked quarterback 11. So it does sort of stir up the pot. It sort of puts him in that top 10 situation very, very accurately. Things to sort of take into account. Kyler Murray is not in the league. I project him to be a very, very fantasy relevant player. Okay? He's also very mobile, way more mobile than Dak will be. Number 2, Baker Mayfield didn't play a full season, neither did Winston, neither did Wentz. All 3 of those quarterbacks finished behind Prescott. I think it's safe to say that at least 2 of those 3 guys will finish ahead of Dak, making it a little bit harder for him to jump up into that top 10. Okay? The other things that sort of help me make this decision, if you look at Dallas's scheme, the last couple years, and I'll use last year as a prime example, I agree with Scott. Zeke is the focal point of the office, and I know that Dak is mobile, but he'll have to be mobile at an unpredictable an unrealistic rate in order to be a top 10 option. So if you look at Dallas, in their passing attempts, they fall 21st in the league at 527 compared to Pittsburgh in the top at 689. So they are in the bottom third of the league when it comes to passing. When you look at rushing, they're actually in the top 10, ranked number 10 at 439. So the focus for this team is very much so on the ground. And Dak Prescott's never thrown in his 3 years in the league, never thrown for more than 3,800 yards. So when you look at the volume's just not going to be there for him to be a passing quarterback. He's got to get it done on the ground, and he's just not going to be able to produce that much on the ground when you look at guys like Aaron Rodgers and even guys like Phillip Rivers, or a new guy coming in like Kyler Murray, who's going to be able to do it in all facets of the game. So I don't think that Dak Prescott has any realistic chance of going top 10 next year because of the factors that I've said.
Yep.
Great points, Mac.
Yep.
Thank you.
One other thing is that this guy is going to get paid top 10 money.
Yes.
And frankly, that number is just I think it's going to keep climbing until that extension happens. And really, it's, I think, when you look at a guy like Carson Wentz or Dak Prescott, I think those guys will be close in the running. But really, I got my money on Wentz, and those guys are division rivals. Like, it's, you're so right in bringing up these variables about dudes who didn't play the full 16 last year, or guys who are just starting off for their first NFL season. It's going to really shake the pot here. And for a guy who finished at 10th in fantasy points 2018, you're talking about 17 or week 17 weeks, right? It's there's more to it than just being able to look at the immediate stats of last year's performance.
Absolutely. And our bet is based off the first 16 weeks. So week 17 doesn't even count. So that's why I'm also using weeks 1 through 16 as my metric to sort of measure this by, because week 17 in most fantasy leagues is irrelevant.
For sure. And projections are basically based on 16 weeks.
Exactly. Landon, you got a little dilemma to share with us here?
All right, guys. So Mark and I both play in a pool league. And Mark missed...
we're talking billiards here.
Billiards. Yeah. We're not on swimming lessons here. we play billiards every week. And this week we played another really good team, a bunch of really good players. And I was playing against a guy, super nice guy, super talkative. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? In business, in my industry, in the industrial and automotive industry, it's hard to find guys like this in customer service. And he told me he worked in that automotive industry. So I'm thinking to myself, this guy, maybe he would want a job. Didn't bring it up to him, didn't say anything. His girlfriend was there watching us play pool, and I was thinking to myself, my girlfriend, that's the last thing she would want to do on a Tuesday night is watch people play pool.
100%.
Anyways, right? Didn't think anything of it. We finished, didn't really talk to him much again. At the end of the night, he went up to me and said, "Hey, can I get your number?" I said, "Yeah, sure, whatever." Didn't really think twice. And he said he would text me later about it, or tell me later about it. So last night, I'm sitting on the back patio with my girlfriend, with Drew, and I get a text saying, "Hi, Landon." And I said, "Hi." And meanwhile, I'm showing this, and we're like, what could this be about? What are the chances? And I get a text a couple minutes later saying, "Do you like the curves on my girlfriend?"
No.
Damn! We like you. Interested?
No.
For those of you that have not ever seen a gram of Landon or anything, he is not an unattractive man. I will say
not by the slightest.
You could do a lot worse than Landon.
Classic Finlander.
Can't do a whole lot better, though.
Really nice straight hair, really soft.
Okay, I feel like there's more to this story.
So I said no, I'm good, and then I block his number.
Smart.
Not interested.
Well, that seems a little harsh to reboot. You should have been a little flattered. They had targeted you, hunted you, and selected you as the next one in their line of wonderful sexual escapades.
So I get into work this afternoon, and I'm talking to Mac. We're doing projections, and I open up my messages app on my MacBook, and it wasn't So his number was blocked on my phone, but not my Mac. I open my Mac, and there's pictures.
No.
And a video.
No.
And so I have pictures of his girlfriend and a couple cougars saying, "Oh, come on, live a little. We like to have crazy orgies." And
Shut the up.
yeah.
Tough Tuesday night for Landon as he has to turn down multiple sexual advances from different parties.
So
I feel for you, buddy.
I'm dead. It was so funny. And like it was so funny. I've sent screenshots to all my pool mates and our group chat on Instagram and stuff. So I figured I'd share the story.
I mean, I have to assume the talent hanging around a pool hall isn't top notch. That's not tier 1.
Are we looking like a mid third round draft pick, or are we talking to foreshadow for later? Are we talking some penny stocks here?
We're talking. I didn't consider for a second drafting.
I'm curious.
So Devontae Parker.
Did this person use any? Was there any pool innuendo used in the advances?
That's what like Steph and Adam are saying. Did he stroke his pool cue, or like,
were they looking to chalk up your cue, so to speak?
Oh my God.
Yeah, no 8 balls were sunk that night. I'll tell you that. Oh, he said too at the end. He's like, we have Coca-Cola as well. I don't know what.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Like Coca-Cola original,
Not Pepsi.
or that crap they make these days?
Yeah, I'm into Pepsi. I should have said.
Yeah, Coke zero chance, eh, Lando?
Yeah.
Okay, that's enough of that.
Well, Lando, you still got it, buddy.
Still got it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you can grab the show on Instagram at Saturday Morning Snap. You can get us on Twitter as well at SMS_fantasy. If you want to get in touch with any of the guys themselves, handles are in the episode description below. Or if you want to get a hold of Landon, just ask him for a job and then text him nudes of yourself.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode.
See you later.
Networking.
We're going to jump into a little bit of news. First piece is very interesting to me. It comes from azcardinals.com. Basically, there was a report that projects Arizona's starting 3 wide receiver set as Larry Fitzgerald, no shock, Christian Kirk, and Andy Isabella. It sounds like Hakeem Butler has a lot of ground to make up in Phoenix. What do you make of that?
Did you see how fast
Isabella
Kyler Murray was?
No, Isabella, man.
Well, they were racing, and Murray almost beat him.
I know that, but did you see Andy Isabella? He's like taunting Kyler Murray as they cross the line. He's like looking at him.
Close.
Rewatch the video. Yeah. He's like looking straight at him, running full speed. He's just toying with him.
Right, I'll take a look.
I feel like this information makes a case for maybe us doing our fantasy drafts just a little too early.
Now, here's the thing, though. Is this bordering on coach speak a little bit too much, or do you think this is a legitimate report?
To me, I don't... Scotty, go ahead.
I never trust any type of depth chart that is put out before the month of August, at the very least, personally. Because I believe up until that point, it is absolutely all coach speak. You don't know what's going on in those locker rooms, and you don't know how a coach wants to motivate. And there is no better way of motivating somebody, maybe if they think they're full of talent, but maybe they're a little too comfortable or maybe looking a little lazy, than slapping a piece of paper on the wall that says you are an inferior choice. And I think the depth chart is one of the best gimmicks to tell somebody to straighten up or they're not going to get playing time. But come September, do I think that stands up? Not at all. And that's the infuriating part of trying to read into all the OTA reports and whatnot.
Marky, what's your 2 cents?
Well, let's just take a look at that offense. I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be throwing the ball more than 25 times in a game. And he's already got Larry Fitzgerald out there. He's already got Christian Kirk. And frankly, I don't think like when it comes to Andy Isabella and Hakeem Butler, that's going to be a coin flip. Like those guys aren't going to be edging each other at this point. None of them have seen an NFL snap yet, and they still have David Johnson, who is going to have a completely new role compared to the way he was used last year. I don't look at that team as a passing team, so I'm not really putting too much stock into either one of those guys. But I honestly, like I said, coin flip between Isabella and Butler.
I mean, 25 is crazy low. Even Josh Rosen last year in this offense was throwing for 35 to 40 times a game attempts.
So it's funny, Mark.
How'd their offense go last year?
Oh, I'm not saying it was great. I'm not saying it was productive. I'm just saying he's going to throw more than 25 times a game.
Hey, you know what their main problem was a misuse of their backfield.
Agreed.
Look for things to change this year.
I like it.
I actually have his attempts projected at 404 passing attempts, and which is just a fraction over 25 per game. And I think the offense wants to actually run the most plays this year in football. So that's kind of their kind of goal. It's easy to have goals in the offseason. Of course, every team wants to do that. But with that said, I think there's potential.
Check down throws to David Johnson count too, though. So, yeah, I mean, if you look at David Johnson when he was utilized properly in 2016, he had, almost 100 receptions. That's well into the, 130, 140 target range. So
and they
those
took
count
Isabella
too.
First. Mm-hmm. It's not out of the realm of possibility that it's not out of the realm that Isabella does start in front of Butler. I think Butler will have his due chance, but yeah, I have Isabella projected for more targets.
Well, Isabella was taken rounds ahead of Butler, so at this point the news sort of matches the draft capital. But we'll see how it plays out in the offseason. If we flip over to Green Bay, which is always a good spot for me to land, Packers' new coach Matt LaFleur wants to get the running backs more involved in the passing game. Coach speak or legitimate?
I think that speaks well for Dexter Williams potentially. Mm-hmm. Rather than a Jamal Williams.
Interesting. I think it speaks really well for Aaron Jones.
Yeah, that too.
I think that's the piece that Aaron Jones has been missing.
The question I would ask, and Mac would probably be the best one to answer this, is how confident in your O-line are you going into this season?
I mean, they addressed some needs in the draft and bulked up the defense. So I think there's going to be more offensive plays ran, and I think when you give them more looks on offense, they've got to try to develop that run game. You've got two capable backs in there, and Dexter Williams coming in. Who knows what he's going to contribute? But I'm very confident in Aaron Jones. So if he's going to try and get them more involved in the passing game, that's fantastic for anybody who wants to own Aaron Jones, I think. Yeah.
Well, and if there's a quarterback who could pull off a great, a couple great screens and whatnot, it's Aaron Rodgers. Oh. So whether it's coach speak or not, I don't see how that would be a negative. There's no way that's a negative. No. You're right, for any of the running backs. And, he is a gunslinger, but I could see a coach trying to incorporate maybe a bit more refinement to the all-out gunslinger offense that Green Bay's kind of been doing for the past, very successfully, I will add, over the past few years. They might be trying to switch it up a little bit and try to get some finesse screenplays and whatnot worked in instead of just the massive focus on down the field tosses.
Last piece of news, and
we all like Aaron Jones.
Yeah, agreed. Last piece of news, had to throw this one for Mark. Lamar Miller looking to join the DK Metcalf camp in cutting body fat. Shaking my head.
Is this like another Eddie Lacy scenario where he gets a bonus if he gets below a weight class?
What's going to happen if Miller cuts body fat?
Right.
He's going to be slightly less crummy.
He's still going to lose his job at the end of the year to Deonta Foreman. Hot take.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe he can work for Abercrombie or something.
Yeah. Okay, that does it for the news. So we are going to jump into some fantasy stock talk an idea that we had last week that we sort of grown over the week. And this happens to fall under Scott's interest in some finance. He got a little bit jealous when Landon and I were talking blue chips. So we decided that we would equate some fantasy football players to different types of stocks, just for some fun. So the 5 that we're going to be looking at today are growth stocks, dividends, new issues like IPOs, defensive stocks, and penny stocks, and give you or try to give you some players that fall under these categories. So we're going to open up with growth stocks, and a growth stock would be equated in the fantasy world as a player who's on the verge of a breakout, mainly a second or third year player with a ton of upside and future value if they hit. Maybe somebody you're looking to either keep at the end of the year or trade mid-year to parlay that value. So I'm going to kick this over to Landon, and I'm going to let him start things off for us. Who's your pick for a growth stock?
Well, yeah, my growth stock is a guy that's been pretty well hyped up this offseason, and that is Mike Williams. With the Chargers are one of those teams that people like to root for because they make it so well. All their fantasy players are doing well. Phillip Rivers, everyone, but they just fall short. You want to believe in them and they stop. But Mike Williams this year, with the departure of Tyrell Williams and his freak physical stature, he was he was one of the best wide receivers in that draft class, ahead of Corey Davis. He was picked, I believe, top 10, 7th, I think, overall in that draft. And I think he finally has the opportunity. Last year, he was a red zone target. This year, I think he's due for some more volume. I'm still not concerned with Keenan Allen, but I think that he will be looked to more often this year. So my growth stock is Mike Williams. He's gonna do well.
Fantastic. Scotty?
For my growth stock, I went with, I thought if you're looking for growth, you're looking for an opportunity where there's been a downtrodden player. And I think O.J. Howard is a great candidate for really great growth this season. He was out for 6 games last season, and he still put up very impressive numbers on a per-game played basis. I don't see Tampa being ahead a ton this upcoming season. And with, Peyton Barber in the backfield, I think there'll be a lot of throwing going on. And I could see Winston checking down to O.J. Howard a lot. But that even being said, I don't even think it will always be checkdowns. I could see him looking really far down the field because O.J. Howard is an athletic freak. And with their current receiving core outside of Mike Evans, I really think that he's going to be zeroing in on O.J. down the field. So my pick for a growth stock this season is O.J. Howard. Love that. We just finished up our tweaking our projections on the Tampa Bay receiving core, and O.J. Howard miles ahead of Cameron Brate. So I agree with that sentiment. Mark, who's your growth stock? Yes.
For this spot, I got Michael Gallup. Going to increase his speed from a trot. That's right, to a gallop.
You can't
going
leave
into
the
a
pun
second
alone.
year. Of course not. He took a bit of time to find his footing last year. Played really well in the playoffs, I thought. He's going to come back and be that wide receiver 2 who can just play a slightly different game than Amari Cooper. Like, Amari is a much better route runner, but Gallup is a bigger guy and really excels at extending himself and getting up there to time those big high ball catches. So I think he is going to impress this year and be that guy for a big growth.
Love it. My growth stock is Calvin Ridley. Right now his ADP is 601, first pick of the 6th round. I was lucky enough to get Calvin Ridley in our Dynasty league last year in our rookie draft, and so that served me really, really well last year. In projecting him in 2019, I think the consensus amongst us is that Calvin Ridley's volume is going to increase, but his efficiency is going to fall. And that's typically what you'll see. So he might have a very similar season, but just might do it in a little bit of a different way. And I think where you benefit as a fantasy player here is that he's not going to be as volatile. He's going to be a little bit more consistent. His baseline is going to rise. That floor is going to be higher, and that ceiling is still going to stay the same. I think think the biggest benefit of Calvin Ridley last year was we didn't give him enough credit on the big playability side. 2 games with 3 touchdowns. So that was fantastic to see, but he was hard to play because you just didn't know when the fireworks were going to happen. So I think this year Calvin Ridley steps up, is the wide receiver 2 for the Atlanta Falcons, who, as a passing offense, Matt Ryan could see anywhere from 550 to 600 attempts on the year, and he throws it at about 70%. So you're looking at in the range of like 400 completions, 420, someone like that. So I think Calvin Ridley is a lock for somebody who should grow upon last season and potentially develop into filling Julio Jones's shoes in the future when his time is up.
Max, so Mike Williams is going 5'10", Ridley's going 6'01". Would you take Ridley over Williams?
I would, just for the upside.
Cool.
Yeah,
I don't mind that.
Yeah, I look at the Chargers and I do love that offense, but Melvin Gordon is the centerpiece of the Chargers offense, whereas, Matt Ryan does like to throw a lot more than they run. And we didn't get to see that a whole lot last year with Devonta Freeman out. He will be back, but Tevin Coleman's gone. So now they're relying on Ito Smith as the running back too, which I guess they'll be a little bit more hesitant to use in the same capacity they did Coleman. So that's why I would give the bump to Ridley over Williams. But I do like Williams. Yeah.
All right, so next with our dividends, I took this as a player that gives a really good baseline of consistency, but with massive upside. So they need to do multiple things in my mind. And that's a running back with catching ability. That's a David Johnson. That's who I picked. He's going at the 105, and he is easily my 105 spot. I really like David Johnson. I think that offense does take a massive step up. I think they do run a lot more plays than last year. I know their offensive line was not really addressed, but I think they're going to use, like Mark was saying, their running backs a lot more efficiency. Get them out in space. Don't just run through the middle.
Up the middle,
and
over and over.
I think it's easy to project him for over 263 attempts, over 90 targets. I have a somewhat conservative, only say 643 yards receiving through the air, but over 1,000 yards on the ground. And I think he is a locked and loaded dividend. Build your team around him. Don't be worried about what happened last year kind of guy.
Agreed. I love it. And you're getting him at a little bit of a value still. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, he's not the 101 anymore, which is great.
Right. It's funny to note that we all went running back except for you, Scott. So I do want to hear your case for Davante Adams, wide receiver out of Green Bay.
When I hear the word dividend, I'm thinking absolute blue stock or blue chip stock. You're talking about a company or a player that you have absolutely no doubt about, and you can sleep at night knowing that you've picked. And when I think about Davante Adams, you're talking about a situation that he excelled in over the past few seasons and was, arguably the wide receiver to have. And I would say his situation over the past offseason has really only gotten better from a fantasy perspective. So to me, if you want to talk about a guy, I would say because I feel he's never really had much more competition for receptions. And Aaron Rodgers is still Aaron Rodgers. He's in his prime. He's just as healthy. And he's healthier than last year. He's healthier than last year, wouldn't he be? He was hurt all last year. He still put up great numbers. So yeah, I get why it'd be a little bit better. That's why he is my choice as a blue chip absolute stud player. I am saying he is the wide receiver to have in the NFL. That's it. Aaron Rodgers is fully healthy. Davante Adams is the clear leader of the wide receiver room. And while they try to figure out their running back situation and try to incorporate all the talent they have there, I see Davante Adams just having monster weeks in this upcoming season, and to me, he is a safe blue chip stock that I would plug and play every week.
Davante Adams could very well be the number one fantasy wide receiver in 2019. In an offense that for the past 4 or 5 seasons has been in the top 5 for attempts. You got to love a healthier Aaron Rodgers and a motivated Davante Adams, and I agree with that, Scott. I love it.
He's hitting his prime as a wide receiver. He's been the rookie. He's with all the promise. He's been the young guy with all the promise. Mm-hmm. Now he is the leader there outside of Aaron Rodgers, I would say, in Green Bay. And I think this is the season where he's going to just really take the reins, completely own the wide receiver room. And I would love to be on that room.
I'm going to go for a very simple pick, very easy, but Alvin Kamara, New Orleans Saints running back. Mark Ingram now gone, off to Baltimore. They do have Latavius Murray as the backup, who will fill that Mark Ingram-like role, get somewhere between 120 to 140 attempts. But Alvin Kamara should see an increased workload from the rushing standpoint. He was under 200 attempts last year, should be into the low 200s, maybe in the 220 range this year, still involved in the passing game. I love him to be, crazy productive. We extrapolated 25 episodes back, we extrapolated Alvin Kamara's performance, production, potentially on a weeks 1 through 4 basis without Ingram, and it was just mind-boggling how many points he ended up with. So not to say that that's going to happen, but the ceiling for Alvin Kamara is so high, but also the floor is, ridiculous. So he is that perfect, to me, dividend stock where he's going to give you everything you wanted and a little bit more.
Marky, who you got, my man?
I got a player who is probably a lot of people's just favorite football guy. He is so good at both the running and receiving game, and that's Christian McCaffrey.
Big shoulders.
Big role. He's going to play, I think he's going for the 1,000. Last year he was just, like 130 yards short of reaching that for 1,000 rushing and 1,000 receiving yards. He's going to have an equally important role. And frankly, the tandem of him and Cam Newton, like imagine being on a defense trying to stop that. It's just realistically, those guys are kind of, they've found a way to just baffle defenses, and I love that about McCaffrey.
Marky, my initial projection on Christian McCaffrey was outstanding.
Bananas.
He was almost the 101, the best overall fantasy player or running back.
Wouldn't it be fun to just own him in a league? Wouldn't that feel great?
But I had to back down a little bit. But I think he do if his role manages to increase from it did last year. It's crazy. He's so elusive.
The one thing I'll say about McCaffrey, I do think he was a little bit overworked last year. So I think he performed pretty close to his ceiling without being a little bit too much touchdown dependent. So I think it'll be tough for him to repeat a season like last year. But I think if you have an unhealthy Cam Newton, it's going to be tough not to use him as much as they did. So he's definitely a locked and loaded option, and I think a perfect pick for this category. But jumping on to a new category, we've got
did I do good?
You did very well. We've got the new issue stocks, the initial public offerings, IPOs, if you will. So we're going to equate this to rookie players that, when invested at the right time, could maximize the potential performance and value for your fantasy teams. I'm going to jump in first and buy into the hype in Arizona. And like we said, we don't like to buy into coach speak, but when coach speak matches draft capital, that's a telltale sign to me that things are trending in that direction. So I'm going to go with Andy Isabella, currently as the 1402 in leagues. So really, he's not being drafted. He's being left on the waiver wire. So I think that if you want to monitor him or take a flyer on him, you totally could in like the 13th round, one round ahead of where he's being drafted on average.
Marky?
I'm still on the train of this JJ Arcega upside character.
Nicely played.
I like this guy for a lot of reasons, especially just the factor that he's a player that's hard to kind of equate to another guy. I think he's gonna be a big role in Philadelphia. He's not going to be like other receivers around him, and I think Wentz is going to find him a lot of times this year. So yeah, I got J Jaws all day.
Scoots, let's go.
For my IPO pick, I'm going with an athletic tight end. We're going Noah Fant. I think the investment's worth it because the difference between having a every week starting tight end that you believe in and trying to ride the waiver wire every week to try to get a tight end, it's night and day. So although there's risk with any rookie tight end, I really think he can find a good home in Denver, and a couple seasons from now, I think you'll be reaping the dividends of taking a risk on this IPO.
This is so frustrating to me because I set this whole thing up, and I was like, you know what, I'll just jump in at the end and fill in my guys. And the one guy I really wanted for the new issue stock was Noah Fant, and I jump on and I see that Scott's taking him. So I love that pick, Scott, but I hate
you timed your entry to the market poorly.
Yes, I did. You're right. I did.
Scott said he meant no offense by it.
Ian, wow. Oh my God.
Oh, you teachers, once you're out of work, are unbearable.
Oh, Jesus.
Landon. All right. Paris Campbell, easy pick, end of the 13th round. Indianapolis offense, you want a piece of that. And Andy Luck offense. I think with T.Y. Hilton easily getting hurt, maybe aging, I think Paris Campbell slots right in and then shows out.
Love it.
So next for my defensive stock, easy yards.
What is a defensive stock, Landon?
So it's very stable, secure. Doesn't really have a lot of upside. Doesn't have really a weak winning performance, but it's not going to bust you. It's not going to put up that donut. No, everyone hates the 0 on their team. At least give me something here, right? Even like a 5 points, 7 points. At least you might not lose on that. You might not win. You might not lose. Anyways, Jordan Howard, Philadelphia running back. I think he's going to get the first shot at that job. I do love Miles Sanders and his upside, but Jordan Howard's proven it year after year, and I think that he's going to get that opportunity in Philadelphia. They haven't had a really good running back since J.J. didn't have knee problems, which was a long time ago. So easy yards, Jordan Howard.
Scotty.
For the defensive pick, I really focused on the idea of a guy who was not going to lose you a week. Easy to get, but not going to bust you. So I actually went Tevin Coleman, and this is based on his time in Atlanta mostly. I know San Francisco's a bit of a weird landing spot with the committee going on there, but I do think there's a chance that he actually is the dark horse to come out and become a stable RB2, he's not going to win you the week. Absolutely not. But I really don't think he's going to lose you the week. And I went Tevin Coleman there.
Tevin Coleman.
He's certainly the best.
Telvin.
After a couple glasses of Merlot, it becomes Telvin.
What was last week's excuse?
I think, in my opinion, he's the best back in that field, and currently 6'10". So you're almost getting him in the 7th round. So just to note that.
All right.
Telvin loves to drink Merlot, I hear.
It's a minor in English, not a degree.
Me in this spot here for a consistent guy. Even last year, I could have probably had him at the spot as Kenyon Drake of the Miami Dolphins. Now, even more so, I think he's going to have a breakout year, to be honest. By his standard anyway. He's still very young, going into his 3rd season, and Frank Gore has left Miami, leaving him in front with Kalen Ballage behind him. I really like Kenyon Drake for this spot.
I'm going in with my man. Yeah. I'm going with my man, Julian Edelman, currently at the 403. If you look at him last year, did serve a small suspension at the beginning of the year, but when he came back, 12 games, never busted. Never had a great week. If you look at consistency charts, never had a great week, but never busted. So that he was in the realm of 10 to 16 fantasy points every single week for the 12 games that he played. So to me, Julian Edelman is your Iron Man, the man that's going to give you the best chance of winning each and every week by being a staple in your roster.
Keep on going, Mackie.
Cool. Penny stocks is the last one we're going to cover, and this is going to be a player that you can't really afford to invest a lot in. And for us as fantasy players, we're talking about draft capital. And the reason why you can't invest a lot is because probability states that you're probably not going to see any return on investment, but the potential, the allure of a potential massive success or gain is present, and so we're thinking maybe a little bit more of like a late round flyer. And for me, I hate to go this route, but when you stat out that Miami wide receiving core, there's just so many question marks. And you look at a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in, probably trending to be the starter there. Guy threw for, on pace to throw over 600 attempts last year with Tampa Bay. I'm going to lean to a guy that gets year over year, hype upon hype upon hype. It's going to be...
Not again.
We're doing it again. And this is going to be the year. I hope that it hits. Devontae Parker, currently drafted 1305. Doesn't really cost you a whole lot. But guys, I really do think that this is the year that it actually materializes. I do. I really do.
I'm having flashbacks. I swear I've heard that
the last 3 years. I know
3 seasons in a row. Yeah.
And I'm
you must be a fortune
stupid
teller
to make this pick. Stupid, but I sincerely think this is the year that it happens.
It's magical. Do it if anyone's going to do it.
You're damn right.
So I am selecting a young man whose role is maybe not 100% just yet, but that's just because there's so many question marks in the receiving core of this team. So I'm going to go with Byron Pringle of the Kansas City Chiefs.
I wonder where you got that from.
Well, I was inspired by actually the great work of one of my peers.
Yes.
Mackenzie Tout, the great Mackenzie Tout, put out a thread on this guy a few weeks ago, Byron Pringle, and I've just been trying to keep tabs, as we all have, on this situation. We still don't know. We don't. To me, I don't think Tyreek Hill is even going to be there at the start of the season. And then you got just filling in those gaps. You got guys like Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, none of whose roles are certified on that offense just yet. Mm-hmm. I can say maybe Watkins has the definitive role. But Pringle is one of those guys who, has impressed coaches. They really think he's an intelligent player, and they seem to, they have fantastic coaching in that squad. So I'm going to go with Pringle here on a big flyer penny stock.
Now, Scott, I sincerely hope that you didn't put Rashaad Penny as your penny stock just for the pun, because he's currently being drafted in the he's the first pick of the 7th round. How does that classify as a penny stock?
Well, first of all, it is a penny stock because his name is Rashaad Penny, and you just took my whole bit. So I
see
furious.
What you did there.
I'm livid. I chose Rashaad Penny as my penny stock because he is Rashaad Penny. So, you can go politely screw yourself and sit in the corner. I shouldn't have to explain why, if he is available in the later rounds, I think Rashaad Penny is the best option out of that Seattle backfield. Why their broken surgically repaired options are not going to supplant him in the long run.
Ooh.
So yes,
he's
even
not
at
going
the
that
7th,
late though. 7th.
I will agree, but he is Rashaad Penny, and therefore he is my penny stock. And if you can get him in the 7th round, I would take him.
I expect this coming out of Mark, but from you, I'm a little bit disappointed.
Sometimes you just have to best Mark in the pun game.
Mm-hmm. Landon
should have changed it last minute.
I also
Scotty.
feel insulted, by the way, Mac.
Why? Why? Because you should have picked up on that?
No, because you would have expected from Mark.
Because you'd expect me to put pun. Rashaad Penny here.
all I hear is that Mark missed the mark.
That is true. Landon, close this thing out, man. True penny stock.
For the least surprising pick of the draft here, we're going Justice Hill. And so a lot of people think Lamar Jackson doesn't check it down. But they also said that about Cam Newton. And there should be no reason why that he won't see the volume there. So I totally have faith in Justice Hill, and I think he's going to do it. All right.
No justice, no peace. So that's gonna wrap it up for us today. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I think this was a fun one. Lots of good talk back and forth. Landon, hopefully you can stay away from those stray, what do you call them? Swingers. Those stray swingers in Thunder Bay. But
you should watch the movie Pool Hall Junkies, though. It's very
I've seen it. But hey, just a quick reminder, we are still looking for 4 more people to join the Listener League. We're going to put up a post very soon on Instagram. If you want to get a DM to us, if you want to comment on the post, send us a tweet, an email, go ahead and do so. I think it's going to be a fantastic league, potentially playing with some different formats, like either a super flex or a tiered PPR. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun. You can play with the 4 of us, and keep your eyes peeled for that. I think that's to do everything for us. Boys, you want to sign off here, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, happy Canada Day. Stay safe.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy your long weekend, boys.
All right, goodbye.
Bye-bye for now, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. Follow us on Twitter at SMS_fantasy. Support this independent podcast at patreon.com/SaturdayMorningSnap.